So I assume that you're in the look for a Tonex pedal. And now that you have done your research, you realize that there are two versions of the pedal. You got Tonex and Tonex One. And you might be wondering what's the difference besides the price point and also the size. Well, the first difference that you won't find is in sound. Both of them sound the same way, and both of them have basically the same features when it comes to effects and their capability when it comes to reproducing and creating the sound of a guitar amplifier through the use of digital mediums. So what's the point, you might be asking? Well, I'm here to answer that question because I happen to own both of those pedals and I found professional use for both of them here in the studio and also here on the road as a professional guitar player. So let me give you my takes on it. At the first glance, the first difference that you will notice is on size. The difference actually is gigantic because Tonex One is using the enclosure found on mini pedals. In contrast, the original Tonex pedal presents 3 switches and it's a very, very big pedal. It's a chunker, I gotta say. But it allows for way more hands-on controls, and both of them, regardless of the size, requires a little bit of menu diving. More on that later. But in reality, sound-wise, they're quite similar, if not the same. They're basically the same, being very honest. But one of the big differences on the amount of I/Os that both of those pedals have to offer. Tonex One only offers input and a stereo output, and that's it. It has a USB connection that it's meant to be used in tandem with the editor and the Tonex apps that are part of the ecosystem. In contrast, the original Tonex has plenty of I/O. It has an input for your guitar, of course, but also has expression pedal input, 2 outputs for the stereo out, and of course, it also got MIDI and expression, as I mentioned before. So you can already start to see the big difference there. When it comes to MIDI implementation, now that Tonex is capable, the entire ecosystem, to reproduce effects inside of the Tonex pedal, the MIDI implementation is fantastic because it allows you to turn on and off the different effects that you are applying on the different patches that you create on your Tonex. But also, you can use the expression pedal to control and modulate more than one parameter at a time, very similar to what you do with eventide pedals, for example. And at this point, you might be thinking, well, it seems that if both of them behave the same way, sound the same way, Tonex One is the best option, right? Because it's cheaper and it's even smaller than the other one, the original. Well, everything I mentioned regarding MIDI and expression compatibility are not available in an easy way, allegedly, on Tonex One. I have seen several videos of people managing to use the USB connection through the use of a particular MIDI controller that is using Bluetooth. And this method relies on having your Tonex connected to an Android device that acts as a sort of an interface between the pedal and the Tonex pedal, allowing you to have access to some of the MIDI functions that are part of the built-in Tonex ecosystem. But being frank, I wouldn't do it live because of it, first and foremost, being kind of cumbersome, has many moving parts, and the biggest and most important of my problems with it is the fact that it relies on Bluetooth. I have already had plenty of bad experiences rocking Bluetooth-driven gear on the stage and it failing on me miserably. Why? A club, if you're lucky and you're doing your due diligence, is gonna be packed with people, and that means plenty of cell phones, all of them rocking Bluetooth signals. Those are gonna get in the way of the connection between your Bluetooth pedal and wherever you are connecting that pedal to, making it basically not reliable at all. There might be cases on which it works, that's of course gonna be a fact, but I wouldn't rely on it from a professional perspective. So if you are looking for MIDI compatibility and a huge array of control over the Tonex ecosystem, the big Tonex original is the one that you should get. Another difference is that Tonex, the original one, has access to a plethora of different presets that you can store and have access to on the device, on the pedal, while performing live. In contrast, Tonex One only has access to 20 different presets that have to be accessed through the use of a menu rather than using the foot switch. Why is that? Well, the foot switch on Tonex One has 2 different ways to be utilized. You have mode 1, which is basically switching between one preset to another, always back and forth. And the second mode is an on and off switch, which is self-explanatory. Basically speaking, when the pedal is on, the effect in question, the amplifier in question, is being affecting the signal. And when you push it and you turn it off, the guitar goes straight as if nothing is getting in the way. You might be asking, so what's the point of that function? More on that later, because it actually has a very good use. When it comes to my personal use, I originally got the first Tonex as soon as it got released because I was in the look for a system such as this one. I happen to own a few guitar amplifiers that I love, but they are vintage and kind of difficult and quite expensive to keep in good condition. So as soon as I saw that Tonex was a thing, I was probably one of the first early adopters that got the pedal. And I've been fascinated and quite happy with the sound of the whole ecosystem ever since I got it. Now, I faced some issues. The first one, when IK Multimedia announced that Tonex will be capable of having access to some built-in effects as part of the sound of the pedal, that made the pedal kind of redundant because I use it as the center stage of my main pedal board. I didn't have use for the built-in effects due to the fact that I'm rocking a few event-type pedals, and the sound of my board is quite capable. Secondly, the size of the pedal itself was taking a lot of room on my pedal board, stopping me from using one of my favorite pedals ever. And also I realized that I was only reliant on 2 different patches, because in that board I'm using a kind of clean sound and my main distortion, and that's it. So I didn't have use for any of the different profiles that I could load inside of the internal memory of the device. So that was kind of a bummer. And then IK Multimedia announced Tonex One and covered all of my problems. Why? Because, well, it's smaller, allowing me to bring back that particular pedal I wanted to have it on my board. Secondly, it only rocks 2 channels, basically speaking, acting as an amplifier, the same way as I was using the main Tonex on that board. So it covered all of my problems, and I loved it. And since I had no use for the effects, I couldn't care less about the lack of MIDI integration to that system. So that solved the problem. But then, that left me thinking in what to do with my original Tonex pedal. Since I don't like to sell my stuff because I usually only buy stuff that I will use, I found a way to keep using that excellent piece of gear through the use of this. I created a second pedal board, a much more smaller one, the one that I use for smaller gigs, or specifically speaking, I designed it to be used here in the studio for monitoring and recording purposes. And it's actually very efficient because in this board I have access and I'm capitalizing on all of the built-in effects through the use of a MIDI compatible computer. It's a little bit of a controller. And it's only based on 3 pedals. I got Tonex, a Univibe, and my beloved micro pitch by Eventide. And I added a final pedal to that board, which is the Aux by Universal Audio, which is a cabinet speaker simulator, which is fantastic. You won't believe how good it is until you use it. Because for real, since everybody's rocking the same IRs, because everybody gets them from the same sources, I'm kind of sick with the idea of IRs. I'm preparing for a video on which I'm going to expose all of those ideas in front of you. But I'm just giving you a little bit of my train of thought in that regard. The aux pedal allows me to come up with a sound that is tailor-made for that particular application. And since I have plethora of different options on the aux pedal, I can use it here in the studio to design sounds that would inspire me to write more music. It's very efficient. More on that on a different video, but stay tuned for that one. And speaking of which, I have another video on my other channel on which I'm discussing and showing you some of my tricks here in the studio, on which I am actually exploring and showing you how I use my Tonex board for reamping and recording and producing music. So if you want to watch that one, it's somewhere on the screen. It's actually very good. By the way, my name is Adam, and if this is the first time you are here in the channel, I welcome you, because in here I show you every single thing I do in order to create, write, produce, and of course perform my music live, because I know that making a living as a musician is not a dream, it's a possibility. Now with that being said, let's continue. Remember when I mentioned the other function that Tonex Mini has access to, which is the on and off switch? Well, there is a very good reason that you might consider Tonex Mini as well, but as an extra add-on for your main Tonex. Why? Because Tonex also is capable of modeling to a very accurate degree distortion, overdrive, and fuzz pedals. So you can imagine that you can actually create a patch, a profile of one of those more rare or esoteric guitar pedals that are out there in the market. I don't know, something with a little horseman, kinda could be an idea, that are quite expensive and kinda difficult to get and super easy to be lost. So you can actually create a profile for one of those pedals, insert it or install it on that particular instance of Tonex Mini, and use it as an on and off switch, right? So you have access now to that particular piece of studio gear that you would love to have on the road, but on a mini pedal format. Isn't that fantastic? It's cool, right? Now you have access to a plethora of different sounds on your main Tonex board, on your main Tonex pedal, using the profiles, and you can have the extra layer of adding a particular boutique sounding guitar pedal as part of your rig on an on and off function. Fantastic. Another function that you could use for Tonex Mini in conjunction with the big one is having two different sets of the same overdrive, but having the parameters different in each of the different instances. For example, if you go to the on and off mode, you could have, for example, one that is like your always on boost pedal, and when you click on it, it will switch into a much more hard clipping version of the same pedal, giving you two flavors of the same pedal on one button push. That's super cool, and it's something that I am thinking of doing because ever since I got the mini version, the Tonex One, and I developed my full board using that guy, I see the potential for that to be something happening. Not necessarily soon, but it's still in the making. So, but you can see where I'm going with this. Another extra thing. When I told you that you can store up to 20 presets on Tonex Mini, on Tonex One, and in order for you to have access to this, you have to do some menu diving. You can use it as an overdrive as well. But if you are clever enough to come up with a playlist on which the use of different or distortions or overdrive pedals are spread out in a way that makes sense and allows you to kneel down after 4 songs just to do the switching on the pedal itself, you could actually have access to plenty of sounds with one pedal. I think Tonex is fantastic. You can see from my words that I happen to be a huge fan of it. The concept is excellent. The execution is fantastic. The recently released editor is very, very efficient and very good and very simple to use. The built-in effects are quite good. Limited, mind you, but they are very, very good and efficient for what they are. And if you are intelligent and you come up with a very, very clever system, you can get very, very good results only using a few pedals, having the main Tonex as the starting point. And you can see that the big Tonex is better for smaller rigs, while the small Tonex is great for big rigs. But that's my own opinion. So what's yours? I would like to hear and see what do you think about Tonex. And if you happen to own, or if you got any questions regarding Tonex, please let me know in the comment section down below, because I would be more than happy to answer to those questions. Now, if you like this kind of content, the best way to support the channel is by listening to our music on Apple Music or Spotify, and also by joining us on Instagram and X, because that's the best way for you to get in touch with us in a much more personal basis. And also, I gotta remind you that we got a Discord server that you can join, and the link is on the description of this video. With that being said, the only thing left to be reminded is that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about. And remember that I'll see you when I see you.